Hello folks, in today's video I want to show you how to make a boot menu for your game before you actually load the player into a main menu or any other map. We're going to make it very simple and straightforward. We're only going to use images. We're not going to use any videos or anything playing at this time. I'll show you how to do that in a different tutorial. But for today, I'm just going to make it a very simple boot menu and show you how to play with the animations to make it really nice. And then we're just going to play it as our boot menu when the game starts. If you like this type of content, don't forget to hit that like button. But now, let's get into the video. First, we're going to start with creating a folder for the boot menu. So inside of our core folder, we're going to create a new folder and name this boot. Inside of here, I'm going to first create a new folder and name this as imports. And this is where I'm going to import some images for us to use for our boot menu. For the purpose of this tutorial, I have imported in a quick splash image for the game, and then also the logo from my channel, and then also the Unreal Engine logo. We're going to use all of these three in our boot menu. So back in our boot folder, we're going to go to user interface and then create a new widget blueprint, user widget type. And we're going to name this w_boot menu. Inside of here, we're going to first start with a canvas panel. And inside of the canvas panel, we're going to add in an overlay. And the overlay, we're just going to right click and wrap it with a border. Select the border and set the anchor to the full screen and set the offset right to 0 and the offset bottom to 0. And I'm going to select the brush color and set this to a black color. So I have a nice black background when the images are showing up on top of this. And now we're going to start adding in our images. So first I'm going to use a size box in case I want to resize things. And I'm going to go ahead and add an image inside of this size box. And this image is going to be our first UE logo. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this to Unreal_logo. I want to center this image, so I'm going to select the size box and make sure that it is centered. And then I'm going to select the Unreal logo, and I'm going to drag and drop this Unreal logo right in here. It's going to resize itself and it's going to get bigger. If you would like, you can always make it much bigger than it is. So that's all I want to do with this Unreal Engine logo. So now I'm going to right click on the size box and I'm going to duplicate it. And then this Unreal Engine logo, I am going to rename this to Rajiv_logo. Let me go ahead and select this Rajiv logo. And then in the content drawer, I'm going to drag in my logo image just like this. And then duplicate it one more time. And this one is going to be the Necrovid logo. And I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this Necrovid logo right on top of this, just like this. And this Necrovid logo, I want this to fill the entire screen. So I'm going to select the Necrovid logo, and the X size, I'm just going to drag it until it fits the entire screen. And so for the Y, I want to make sure this is set to, fill screen, and also the size box is set to fill screen. Compile and save it. Now we have all of our images set up in here. We just have to now go ahead and set up our animation. At the bottom over here, you would have a animation sequence. If you don't see this little animation tab, just go on Window and then select this animations, and that will open up this animation tab for you. In your animations tab, we're going to click on this plus animation, and we're going to name this as load in. You can name this anything you would like. I'm just going to name this as load in. And while having the load in selected, you will see that it will show you which animation sequence is selected here. Just click on the Unreal Engine logo here outside, and let's go ahead and add in the Unreal Engine logo by selecting this add button and selecting the Unreal Engine logo. And here we're going to click on this plus icon and then set up the render opacity. This is what we're going to play with. At the timeline 00, make sure it's set to 00. We're going to set the render opacity to 0. So I don't want the image to show right away. I want the image to show about, about quarter of a second in. I want the image to have about like 0.5 opacity. And then about 1 second in, I want to make sure that the image is set to full opacity. And about 2 seconds in, I want the image to have no more opacity. So it's going to start showing up here slowly, and then it's going to come to full opacity. It's going to be right in front of the screen, and then it's going to slowly fade out. You'll see how this works in just a second. Next, we're going to go ahead and select my logo. and then go to the animation and then add my logo in. And I'm going to click on this plus icon and then add in the render opacity. First, what I want to do is at 0, 0, I want this render opacity to be at 0. And also at 2 seconds, I want this render opacity to be at 0. You can see that the keyframes automatically getting added as soon as I edit this. I know I went from 0 to 0, but any type of change that you do, it's going to set up a keyframe. And in your level, if you want to shorten this, you can just drag the keyframe left and right, and then things will change according to where you place your keyframe. The reason why I want this render opacity to be at 0, 0, and also at 2 seconds is basically to keep the logo hidden until the Unreal Engine logo shows up and disappears. Once the Unreal Engine logo disappears, then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to about 1/4 second here, set the opacity to 0.5, and at 3 seconds, I'm going to set this to 1, and then at 4 seconds, I'm going to set this to 0. Now, the last is our Necrovid logo, so I'm going to go ahead and select that out here, and then under Animations, click on Add, and you should see the Necrovid logo here. Let's go ahead and select it and add in the render opacity. Same deal. We're just going to set this render opacity to 0, 0 until my logo finishes playing. Then I'm going to set the opacity to 0 again, so it adds in a keyframe. Then I'm going to go to about 25 seconds, 1/4 second in, and then set this to 0.5. And then about 5 seconds, I want this to be at 1. And then at 6 seconds, if you can't go any further, just right-click anywhere in this timeline, and you can drag the timeline left and right. So let's go to about 6 seconds, and then set this render opacity to 0. So that would be the end of our timeline. Now, if you want a couple seconds after the logo disappears, you can always go 1/4 second here, and then just set this to 0, 0, and then it will add in that additional time frame. So after your final logo has showed, it will take about 1/4 second before it announces that the animation is done playing. How this is going to work is if I press play, you'll see the Unreal Engine logo will show up, then my logo will show up, and then the Necrovid logo will show up, and then it's over. In this case, I've set it up a total of 6 seconds, but in your game, you can choose to increase it or reduce it however long you would like to have all of your logos show up. Once you're done, make sure you select outside of this load-in so that selected load-in button is no longer visible here, this one right here. Because if you have this selected, then anything and everything that you select, it's going to impact your animations. So we just want to finish our animations because we're done with it. So I'm just going to select outside of this animation box, so that's no longer there. So we're going to go to our graph here. We don't need event tick. We don't need event pre-construct. We're just going to drag off of the construct and look for a node called play animation with finished event. This is a simple node, and it's exactly how it sounds. It's going to play the animation that we're going to specify. And once the animation is done playing, it's going to fire this execution pin as soon as it's done. That's about 6.25 seconds like we set up. So for the widget, we're just going to set this to self. And the animations right here, you should have the load in animation. So just drag and connect it to in animation. We're going to set the rest of them as it is, but you can always play with it. If you want the screen to show up 3 times, 4 times, you can always change these values. And if you want to play it in reverse, you can always play it in reverse just like this. But for our use case, we're just going to leave the rest of the functionalities as it is. And once it is finished, we want to drag off of this, and then we're going to go ahead and call for open level by name. Here, make sure the absolute is checked, and the level name has to be the exact name of your map. So if I go to my content drawer, go to my third person folder and open up the maps, I see that the third person map is actually named third person map. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this exact name is actually typed in here. So that would be our third person map. Make sure there's no spelling mistakes, there's no additional spaces at the end or anything like that, or else this won't work. And make sure this absolute is ticked. Once you're done here, this is all you have to do for our boot menu. So now we can close out of this. And in our content drawer, we're going to go back to our core, boot, and then we're going to go ahead and create a new level. And this is going to be named as boot_level. Let's go ahead and open this up and save anything that you haven't already saved. And once you have your boot level opened up, click on this little icon on the top here, and you should be able to open up your level blueprint here. So once you open up your level blueprint, we don't need the event tick. On event begin play, we're going to go ahead and create a widget. This is going to be our boot widget that we just created. So that will be our WB boot menu. And the owning player is going to be our get player controller. And the return value we're going to add to viewport. And also we're going to set input mode to game only. And for the player controller, we're just going to copy and paste this player controller from here. And the return value, we're just going to plug it in here just like this. Let's go ahead and compile and save. And then we can close this out. And the last thing that we need to do here is in your content drawer, let's go ahead and create a new blueprint class. And this needs to be our game mode base. I'm just going to name this as GM_boot. I'm not going to change anything inside of it. You don't have to. This is just a boot menu, so there's no real functionality to this. So to stitch all of this up, we need to go to our edit, project settings, go to your maps and modes. Here for the default game mode, we're going to select our GM boot. And for our game default map, we're going to set this to boot level. So what this does is anytime you package the game and you send it to some friends or you play yourself, the boot level will be the first one to pop up and it's going to play your boot screen. So to test this, make sure that you're in the boot level, and then we're going to go and play in a new editor window. And then you will see that the Unreal Engine logo will show up, and then your logo, and then the actual game logo. And immediately it's going to load up the third person map. And all of your controls and everything works, even though you set up a different game mode as your default. Because the game mode and also the control overrides is also built into the level. So whatever you set up in your project settings shouldn't really affect what is set up in your actual third-person level map. That's it, folks. This is all I wanted to show you today. It's a very quick tutorial on how to create a boot menu for your game. Now, in this boot menu, I did not show you how to use videos. That would be a different video in a different part. But for now, I just wanted to show you how you can make a very simple boot menu for your game to get started. Inside of the widget blueprint for your boot menu, render opacity is only one of the options that I used, but you have a lot other options that you can actually play with to see what you can come up with for your game. So thank you again for stopping by. I really appreciate your time. If you like this video, hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. And I'll catch you all in the next one.